Welcome back, everybody. Okay, let's see who is next. Did we do Jay? Oh no, not yet. Okay, we're going to be doing incel debates. All social medias are located over in the link tree. What's up, Jay? There we go. Hello? Again, you guys, make sure when you guys call in, you have a working microphone. Jay, your microphone isn't working. All right, we'll come back to him. Jay, get the mic fixed. And if you guys want to debate, it's Olive Oil Run on Discord. I'm gonna go ahead and set this up real quick. There we go. Okay. Who else do we have? See if Jay fixed his mic yet. Hello? Yeah, your mic isn't working. Make sure you... Wait, hello?
Nothing?
Wait, talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's good. What's up, Jay? Okay, so state your case.
It's not.
Huh?
Yeah, I actually just came across you today, so I don't actually know too much about you or your channel. I just came in for the past couple minutes to see probably the last two debates that you had.
Okay.
And so I actually don't have super strong, I'd say, disagreements with you. I guess I fall more aligned with the last caller with how maybe it's presented rather than what exactly that you're saying. I'd say one of the biggest things, I suppose, is the statement about men in general, right? Or at least, I guess when you say like, oh, most men aren't good.
Right.
So that I don't agree with that, because to me it's false, right? But I'm also not making the argument that all men are good. I guess my argument is that you actually don't know that.
Right. For sure.
Because there's no metric or measurement on that, right? And then you have to define, okay, what is good and what isn't. And are we comparing that both between men and women? Do they have the same metric of what is good and what is not, according to sexes, I guess? And so I'd say that's like my biggest thing that I disagree with you on, is just, so maybe you walk me through like your mindset.
Yeah.
When you make a statement like that.
Right. So just to clarify, so the last caller, when he was pulling up the data, so the data that he pulled up, so his point was basically, oh, see, it's not that bad. So when I said, okay, so the data point that I brought up, so he was refuting, so I said men made up over 99 or 98% of SA cases, right? So he was like, oh, well, it's not bad because only 2% are convicted, right? So, but what he was trying to say is, oh, well, when you bring up the fact that men make up 99 to 98% of rape, it sounds bad. Well, because it is bad. What it essentially means is men are doing almost all of the rape, but that's what that data means, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
And then the 2% number, those are just who gets convicted, right? So if you look at...
But then you guys agreed upon that.
Right, there's no way for us to know.
It might be around 10 to 12.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Estimate, but it's not exact because we can't know that, right? Because it's not reported.
Absolutely. Right. So we only know that it's higher.
Also goes to right.
Yeah.
And I guess that also goes to just even any statistic, right? Because if you take a mass of people, not every person is going to be a part or be a metric as a part of that statistic, right? It'd be per capita, location, things like that would factor into it.
I guess one that I like, or I guess like the best stat would be the femicides. Femicides in relationships and marriage. That I'd say that and the SA with underage people. That those two were the most heartbreaking and honestly disturbing to me. So so if you look at the data on either one of those, so one, way too fucking high, but two, obviously it's not all men, right? But it's too high, right? We could both agree. Like, I could pull the exact number, but I know the one on child SA. I can't even say what it is, but the fact that 7.7% of boys, which is crazy, like that's really high for it being boys, and 25% of girls, even though it's less than 50%, or it's not a high number, because most people think that.
I agree with you.
Like that's crazy.
Is acceptable,
right? And that's really high, actually.
No percentage is acceptable, right?
Yeah.
And I also do agree, obviously, men actually do commit more crimes, more violent crimes.
Oh, yeah.
And crimes in general, right? Like, that's common sense according to stats and in history for that matter, right?
Oh, yeah.
What I would say is when it comes to statistics, right, and generalizing certain groups of people, there are certain, I think, kind of pitfalls that we can get into if we present certain statistics. For instance, like I'm a black man, for instance, right?
Yeah.
And obviously the black community has like certain well-known statistics or whatever, and it would be considered, more likely someone like me to commit a crime. That's a stereotype, right? Or whatever data or blah blah blah.
Right.
And I think when you see statistics, but then you see actual people, right? Because also, it depends on if you take it out of context or, not really present a full picture, people can judge, right? And I guess my fear is that men might be judged as perpetrators the same way maybe a black man may be judged as a perpetrator unfairly, right? Even though they didn't do it.
I understand what you're
part of their
getting
character,
at.
right? And it's more up to the person to be able to investigate. I'm not saying women shouldn't be vigilant,
right?
But I'm saying it's maybe not a good idea to present or put an image in people's heads of them being a perpetrator just because of they're a man. Like maybe just looking deeper into it than that, right? Because I mean, if you look at crime, for instance, or the prison system, right? There's certain statistics that even go to people who are more likely to commit crimes than others, right? According to, what if you were born in a single mother household, right? Or a single parent household? People from single parent households are more likely to commit crime than people who have two parent households, statistically. But I'm not going to look at somebody who's from a single parent household and judge them and think that they're more likely to commit a crime just as soon as I figure that out, right? I'm not going to find that out about them and think that they're a criminal and that I should avoid them, kind of thing. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely hear what you're saying, but I don't think that it's something, because from what it sounds like to me is like you're just worried about, you just don't think it's good for women to, over stereotype men, correct? Just over stereotype them, like, oh, he's a guy, he's gonna do this, or that's what it sounds like.
I don't think necessarily that women shouldn't, like I said, I don't think that they shouldn't be vigilant about things like that.
And
I think it should be deeper than the surface level of the gender, right?
Absolutely. So what I was gonna say is I do not believe women are over stereotyping, because you could see it in the data, so here's where I'm coming from. So I believe, so how in society they say that men are the protectors. That's a lie. I believe it's the women that are the protectors, right? So I think it's really important to be aware of these things, like the data on, these kind of crimes, so that one, obviously women could protect their children, right? For example, the 7.7 number. right? You need to be able to protect your child. You need to understand that just because you have a son does not mean that you need to be any less careful, right? Or that you can take your eyes off of him, because you know what? 51% of the men committing these crimes, and this is for the woman and men, are the biological father. Rest are male family members. So as women being the protectors, it's important so that they could protect themselves, their children, and also another stat is, I believe, men make up, it was somewhere in the 80s. It was 80 to 86%, men make up 80 to 86% of animal abuse too. So I think it's important, huh?
I just said,
Yeah. So, you know, it's important to share this with women so that they can protect their children, themselves, and animals. Because really, if you really think about it, you know, who's gonna protect you? You know, if you're a child and, you know, you're going through or you're being mistreated or something's going on, odds are your mom's gonna protect you. It's gonna be your mom that needs to make sure you're safe, right? If something bad happens to you.
One can argue that if a dad is present in a child's life, he's just as likely, or not necessarily likely, but obviously if it is a good man, assuming he's a good man, he would protect his child as well. I mean, and as I guess the last conversation you had about committed, like maybe not inflate kind of the idea that most people are perpetrators, because per capita that's not true, right? Most people are just people and regular. Most people actually don't commit crimes, right? That actually applies to both men and women. As far as I guess violent crime or people who are committed for crime, most people don't, according to the whole population, right? If we're taking the whole population of the country, as opposed to what is the prison system, the criminals who are convicted, maybe parole, whatever, it would still be the majority of people who don't, right? And so I guess my argument would still be that a father wouldn't just more likely, well, he would be, I actually agree that he would more likely be the one to hurt the child.
Yeah.
Right?
And it shows in the data too, yeah.
But that wouldn't be the average, right? That wouldn't be the standard. And I guess that's more so what I'm getting at is that that's actually not the standard for men, right? Because we know that according to per capita...
Well, it's not only the father. There's the 49%.
Aren't committing those kind of crimes, though.
There's the 49%, and the 49% is going to be your uncle, your coach, your other adult men, right, that are supposed to be, you know, so, and even, like, say that you have a good father, well, the odds are, you know, women tend to be more observant, right, so, and look at the data on divorces and single moms, so, really, the odds are it's the woman that's going to be protecting her child, honestly. So when it comes to that, so these numbers and knowing these things are just really important. And not only that, but pets too, right? Women need to be kind of aware of the fact that men do make up over 80%.
I think there's plenty of things that I actually agree on that. Like, I don't have a daughter now, but if I did have a daughter, these are things that I want her to be aware of, right?
Right, and you'd want your wife to know this, right?
Prioritize the safety of those that you care about, especially women. And women are more likely to be victimized, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with the capacity for violence. Just physically, that men have the physical advantages over women to overpower them. For instance, do you think that plays a factor as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I was just wondering if you'd be following my train of thought there. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but that's definitely part of the reason is men are, I think a large part of it is men are just stronger on average than women. And so it's a lot easier for a man to make a victim of a woman than it is for a woman to make a victim of a man when it comes to violent crime, that is.
Right, but it's not just woman, though. But I do want to make this point because this is very important.
We could agree. I still don't necessarily agree.
But can we pause for a second? Because this is really important.
It bleeds over a little bit into maybe how you view other people.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm misconstruing your train of thought or how you're viewing it. Because when I did first, I guess, hear you sounded a little misandrous. And I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. I'm just saying that was like my first impression of you. But then as I listened to the next two people you talked to, I started to realize, okay, I'm starting to understand her view a little bit more, right?
Right.
I'd say the second thing, not to take up too much of your time, but the second thing I disagree about is way earlier when I first started, you mentioned something about men who want marriage, for instance. It's more likely for a man who wants to marry, if a man idolizes marriage in his mind and wants to marry a woman, he's out to get her. He's trying to be predatory towards her, right?
Whether it's conscious or not.
That I disagree with.
Right. So.
That I disagree with 100%. So you have the opportunity to,
Yeah, I mean,
speak your mind about that or clarify what your thoughts on the matter are.
So, yeah, so not every, so obviously the man may not be conscious that he, I'm sure some men are consciously fully aware of what they're doing, and some men completely calculate the dynamic to the end, right? But then some might not be aware. Some may think, oh, I just love her and I can't wait for her to be mine and doing the dishes. And so, the mentality or the view may vary, right? Some men might view it through an innocent lens of this is what's normal and that's love, right? Some men might view it as wahaha, like got her, right? So, but
from my perspective, that's actually the general case, right? That I would view that as the general case is a lens of more tradition, right? And
sure, but the bottom line does not change.
Men are actually conditioned at certain points within certain cultures, for instance, like religion, to marry, right? They're conditioned to marry and to want to marry for certain reasons, right?
Oh,
and
I
don't think the average man is looking at these kinds of statistics, and I actually do agree that there are a lot of men who are lazy in relationships and leave a lot of the weight on women, and that's a raw deal, right?
Yep.
But I've also seen the inverse as well. I don't know any numbers on that. I do know that women divorce more than men, but I can't make a metric of that, of who's actually carrying most of the load. That would be he said, she said, right? We can't necessarily prove that. But I'd say, just to give a little perspective, is I think a lot of men are just aloof when it comes to, like, maybe they see it as tradition to marry, but not necessarily viewing, maybe the responsibilities or what those things or what that might entail, right? They get married, and they expect to have a life partner, but aren't necessarily maybe the best provider, don't have a very high level emotional intelligence. I don't think.
Yeah.
I could argue a lot of men don't have a lot of emotional intelligence.
But that's why I said that, like,
I think it's malicious, though.
But that's why I said, I did mention, I think the guy that's hesitant about marriage is the better partner, because at least the way I view that is he's being considerate towards his partner. He's thinking things through, and he's thinking, oh, what if things don't go well, and I don't want to go through this mess, or I don't want to put her through this mess, or I don't want to end up in a situation where I'm trapped and one day might hate her. So that's why I was, because, something I don't like is I feel like, in today's society, let me finish up. I feel like in today's society, women look down on men who don't want marriage. And I don't think they should do that. I think it should be as simple as, if the relationship's good, you stay together. If it's not, you break up. Because let me tell you something, there is nothing that you can't do for a woman that requires marriage. And you guys should be able to leave the moment you're unhappy. That's where I'm at. with that.
Yeah, I agreed, but I also agreed and not quite agreed.
No one should be forced to be with each other.
Right, absolutely.
And I wouldn't want a guy that doesn't want to be with me to be with me. Like, what the fuck? Like, you know, in the name of loyalty, that's bullshit and insulting, honestly.
I think most people would agree, and I also agree, and maybe this is a personal question, but are you religious yourself?
I'm Jewish, yeah. But not
okay,
super.
Right. Probably not practicing whatever. Not my business. But for instance, let's talk about this. I don't think. I actually agree that marriage isn't necessary for all those things. So we agree for that, right? You can treat a woman perfectly without being married.
Exactly.
And I also think marriage. But my extension is I don't think marriage is a good deal for the men or the woman currently. Sure. And I personally think if you're not religious or you have no real reason to be married, traditionally through religion or spirituality, I don't think people should get married. And so I think people who are secular shouldn't get married, and I think that marriage should be separate from the state.
I agree.
But, you know, that's just my opinion. I think it should be completely separate from the state. It should have nothing to do with marriage at all, right?
Absolutely.
Like the whole sharing taxes stuff. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think it's necessary that people are married. But the legal binding, there's some correlation to prosperity, unfortunately. I mean, you talk a lot about, obviously, and even though I have that view on marriage, it doesn't really change the fact that, for instance, the positives of the marriage institution. For instance, like child rearing. It's statistically proven that children are more likely to prosper within a two-parent household where both parties are married to each other. Now, that doesn't account for their own particular relationship. There are plenty of people who are married that have had terrible childhoods and their parents were married.
Right.
But when you are married, when two people are in a marriage relationship, their children are more likely to succeed, according to statistics. And so I think there's some bearing there. And I think that's something to think about when you tell women, oh, don't get married. I think that's a part of the marriage conversation as well when it comes to child rearing. Okay, at least women who want to have kids and care about their kids, the benefits of being married, you know, with children, right?
Yeah, but you could have a marriage household without the marriage. Because listen, the only thing the marriage will do is open the door to all these negative things like DV, make it hard to leave, and headaches. So you could still have a marriage household, but not actually be married. It's like the moment things go south. And this is something else that I believe. I believe that if two people, if it's really true that they both really do love each other and it is a real relationship and it's not lies, you shouldn't need the fucking government to tell you what to do. You guys should be able to figure things out. And don't you agree?
I agree 1,000%. I already told you, marriage wasn't always attached to the government.
Right.
Marriage actually predates being attached to the government. So people were getting married regardless of government before. It's just now currently is attached to government. So, yeah, it's my view. It's not necessary. I do agree. When you get married, it opens up a bunch of cons.
Right. It just makes it hard to leave.
For sure. But there are positives, right? I think one of the biggest things I'd say is, I guess culturally, the idea of marriage has been a large proponent of the idea of monogamy, right? In society, and the role monogamy has, monogamous people generally get married, right? Or have the desire to be married. That doesn't mean they have to, but I view it as a cultural driving force that a lot of monogamous people end up getting married. And I think that overall is at least in the context of monogamous relationships, those are also the best child rearing units for children, the safest units for children. And so I think it should still be, it's hard for me to just crap on it completely and say, oh, no one should ever get married, because I don't agree with that, right? Because by your own argument, you say, you can have all those good things outside of a marriage, but you also have all those good things inside of a marriage that is legally binding, right?
Yeah, but the marriage, you're only adding the bad stuff, because you know how you could have all these good things outside the marriage. All the marriage does is you're adding negative things to the plate, right? Like making it harder to leave. So
right.
What's the
I think that's I mean, I feel like that's only going to appeal to a certain audience, though, right? Which is a secular audience. You're saying it, and you're saying it to women, but religious women aren't going to hear that, because religious women equate it as sacred matrimony, right? And something that God wants for them, like the men and women who are religious, for instance.
Right, those women
so
may be a lost cause,
they're
but remember, those are the
likely going
same
to do it
women
anyway.
filing the 80% of divorce. Remember, those women, they're the 80% filing for divorce. They're unhappy. So you kind of get what I'm saying, and I think there's a reason why the divorce rates are the way they are. I think the majority of marriages are the dudes pushing hard for it, and I'm going to be honest, most guys that are pushing hard for marriage, like the ones that have a mission to get married, right, before they even meet their girlfriend, like those are like the guys that are going to be the not great, right? Like not treating their partners well, making their partner do everything, or be more likely to be abusive. Would you agree that a guy that's just planning marriage, right? Because there's definitely a difference between a man that, after meeting the woman and being with her, decides to want a marriage, right? There's a difference between a guy like that versus the guy that's his goal is to obtain a marriage. It's not really about the girl.
Yeah,
it's about what he wants.
I think that's one of the biggest parts where we may differ. Is that sentiment, right? Because that sentiment can't be proved, and so I think it's opinion versus opinion there.
Right.
I think that's your perspective on it, right? That if a man really wants to get married, he's going to be the one who's more likely to do those things or be a part of that 80% divorce rate, right? Or maybe all his intentions
I mean, that
are
is my
correct.
opinion.
But you can make the same argument. For instance, was it? I lived in Utah for quite some time. The majority of the population is LDS, right? Everyone gets married out there. Everybody gets married out there. It's part of tradition. People do it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily, and I've met many people personally, most of my friends who live out there get married and do get married, and it's a part of the religion and their rearing up, that they're taught to honor women within marriage, within the marriage confines, and literally the entire rearing up from the time that they're children is how to respect and honor your wife and your children and provide for your children within marriage. They just use marriage as the tool to do that, right? It's like, oh, I'm gonna find a woman, I'm gonna get married to her, and then once I'm married to her, the family, it's my responsibility to be the protector. It's my responsibility to spiritually nourish my children, all these different things. And so I guess that kind of goes in the face of your statement about, if a man really wants marriage, then he probably has bad intentions. I honestly don't think so. I think the inverse, honestly. I think a lot of men who don't want to get married, in my experience, a lot of men who I've met in my life personally, usually just want to have sex with the woman. Like they like the relationship benefits, but they actually aren't huge onto the commitment part, committing to the woman, right? They kind of want to play the field, and so the woman will want marriage and want the commitment, but the man themselves won't. And it's not out of concern for the woman; it's more they want to do their own thing. Meanwhile, the men who do want to get married are the kind of man that wants to take care of the wife,
right?
Or at least is taught to.
Well, what I'd say
I'm
to
not
that
saying that's how it's done in practice.
Is I agree that the men that are lying to the girls are not good. You shouldn't lie. But what I will say is the men whom are marrying, they're one not only getting the sex and having fun with the sex, right? But on top of that, they're getting the labor.
There's plenty of sexless marriages. I'd say the relationships where there are divorces, the rate of happiness in their sex lives actually are low, right? Sex isn't happening.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Most divorces, those situations, actually, the prosperity or the healthy sexual relationship within a marriage, things like those are the things that dissolve first when a marriage isn't working out.
Yeah, I mean, I bet. For sure.
So that's not really a benefit to a man who's in a failing marriage, unless it's non-consensual. That's a whole different argument.
But what I'm saying though is like the man who wants to get married versus the man that wants to be single or just have fun or whatever the case is.
Right.
They're both wanting sex.
Which man do you think is better?
Well, let me finish. Honestly, neither, because one's a liar. The other one's like a fucking like shill or like I don't know what to call it. But so they both want sex, but the other just wants labor. The other just wants. So like, do you get what I'm saying? I think the other dude wants a lot more labor and her freedom. So
right. No,
in my eyes, actually, like
I get where you're coming from. I also think it's just another, I guess, generalization, because you can't prove that about those men that you say that about, right? For instance, me myself, I'm a religious person, right? And I view marriage as a heavenly thing, right? I don't expect people to agree with that, and I don't want that legally enforced on anybody, but that's my personal belief, right? And according to that personal belief that I've been taught, according to religion or the dictates of my own conscience and desires, is I actually do want to find a wife, right? I want to find a woman. I'm not rushing to go into marriage. I believe people should vet their partner, but I believe vetting should happen irregardless of marriage, right? And so, therefore, it doesn't. If it's a successful relationship and healthy relationship, I don't think marriage takes away from that. If the foundation is already good and good things are already happening.
Well, I have a question for you. So how do you feel about the chance that, because obviously, things might be going well at first, but you do know that there's a chance that your partner might one day not want to be with you, but have to fucking sit it out, have to wait for the divorce. I mean, why would you want to put her through that if you love her? That's just how I feel.
You can, absolutely. You know what? Absolutely.
Like, why don't you just get her a ring and just say you're married?
I don't not believe in divorce. She can divorce me at any time.
Right, exactly. So what I'm saying to you is, why don't you just buy her a ring? You guys live together and just say you're married. No one's going to ask to see your marriage certificate, right?
Well, I get. Actually, my religion does religious ceremonies rather than state in two separate things. And so you get married religiously, in your religion at a house of religion, and then you get married civilly at a different point. And so I'm not a huge proponent of civil marriage. I already told you I'm not a huge proponent of civil marriage, but I do believe it's good within a certain confine, a certain mindset, and culturally it's good.
I don't think so. I think you should totally skip the civil, because man, it's nothing good's gonna come of it. Seriously. And if you ever want to leave her, let's say one day you're not attracted to her, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but dude, like, you're putting both of you guys.
That's civilly. I was talking about civilly. And
yeah.
So I'm on the fence of whether I want to get married civilly.
But
I know I'm going to get married religiously, because there's no legislation around that.
Yeah,
there's
sure.
No barriers around that, right?
Yeah,
but that's just the standard, and that's the culture that you get both done, right? Now, whether you agree with it or not, obviously you don't agree with it, but many people do still do it, right? People are still married. That also doesn't change the fact that, like, for instance, the child rearing stats regarding marriage, for instance. I mean, if we're talking prosperity, and it's more likely that a child prospers within a marriage or a married household, you can assure or assume that it's a at least healthy, on the healthier end of relationship between the spouses.
Right.
So I guess, like, for instance, if you say you're Jewish, right?
Right.
And so is your argument that no one should ever be civil married, or that the institution of even religion shouldn't have marriage at all? Like marriage shouldn't be a thing, regardless of religion? Or are you just referring the civil binding negatives that come with being
what
civil,
I don't
civilly
like,
married?
my only issue is I believe that both parties should be able to leave the moment they're unhappy. That's it. So anything outside of that, don't care. As long as the man and the woman, the moment they're unhappy, they could leave. And I believe that if you're really a great couple to the point where you're a family, you should be able to have finances and whatever the fuck worked out. Otherwise, find a different partner. You know, you don't want to be with a man who requires the government to force him to pay you. That's outrageous. And he says he loves you. That's ridiculous, right?
Sorry, you cut out a little bit.
So what I'm saying
waiting for you to come back.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello? Come back.
Hello?
Hello? Is it working?
Hello?
Yeah, hi. Is it working? Testing. Is it good?
You cut out.
Okay.
I can't hear you anymore.
Oh,
Sorry.
Is it not working? Hold on, let me refresh this. Man, what the hell is going on? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, is it working?
Yeah, you cut out. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Can you continue what you were saying?
So here's what I believe. I just, like I said, don't like anything to where, like, I feel like the moment any party is unhappy, they should be able to leave. And then 2, women's biggest reason for getting married is the finance. Obviously, they want to make sure that they're financially secure. The way I feel is, why the fuck would you want to be with a man that requires the government to force him to fucking take care of you financially, right? Pick a different guy. The right guy. You guys should be able to sit down, have a conversation about how much money you're going to get and how much he's going to give you when you leave. It's that simple. If you're unable to do this, there shouldn't be
if the right
a
guy
marriage.
wants to get married at that point, then what is your opinion?
What do you mean?
Well, you mean like the right guy. It's not necessarily that the guy wants the government to do it. It's just the case. That's just marriage
if
in
you
America. It's civil, right? When people think of marriage in America, they're thinking civilly, ingrained in the society and the traditions, right? And so
what I would do,
that's what's being thought about.
So here's how I would handle this. I would make the guy fully aware that the only thing he's doing by signing above the dotted line is making it harder for me and him to leave. And if after that's fully explained to him, if he's still pushing for it, then I know that he's a psychopath.
Yeah, well, I think generally with that mindset, usually, I guess from a certain perspective, maybe those people shouldn't be married to begin with, right? I think when it comes to, I guess, the religious aspect of marriage, generally it's not the main metric isn't necessarily happiness, right? It's more so commitment, loyalty, and wanting to please God or whatever, right? And so when I actually agree that people should be able to leave marriage whenever. That's not my argument.
Yeah.
But I also think that maybe just unhappiness in a world that's full of unhappiness and hard times and hardship, that sometimes unhappiness isn't always the best metric to end a marriage, especially one that has children in it. Now,
but people aren't stupid, dude.
It also very much depends on the relationship between the two people. I understand that.
Yeah, like, people are not stupid. Like, no girl's gonna, like, be like, oh, I'm really upset, I'm on my period, so I guess that means I need a break. Like, people aren't dumb, right? And so, obviously, if a girl's leaving the marriage, it means she no longer likes the guy. If the guy is leaving the marriage, he's no longer likes her. I think it's that simple. And I think any reason is good. Because listen, if you stay with somebody that you don't want to be with, you're not only putting you're doing two things. You're putting yourself at risk and you're putting her at risk, because you know what? You're going to be a lot more short. You're going to have less tolerance. You're going to get angry quicker. That's reality. So that's why the best thing you could do for a woman is leave, honestly, because what's the alternative? Put your hands on her? Like,
you know what?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Avoid becoming a fucking number. Avoid becoming a statistic.
Or just, work on the relationship.
No.
I guess that's a different rabbit hole in itself. For instance, like, let's say relationships. For instance, people who have been married 90 plus years. For instance, I worked in a home. I worked in a care home.
Okay.
I changed diapers for people who are 90 plus years old, right? And very many of them, at least at the home I was at, was still married, right? Or a lot of them actually still had their partner in their life.
Okay.
And had relationships with them, even in the care home. And I think a lot of people who have had relationships or in relationships who have been in relationships that long, they've had periods where they might not have been happy, but they stuck it out. But that's more of a relationship thing than not just a marriage thing. To clarify, that's not necessarily a defense of marriage, but rather staying in or leaving a relationship according to happiness. I think it, as far as marriage, I think it still applies though, right? You could still work on your marriage, and it doesn't. Unhappiness.
Yeah, but you can't force it,
isn't necessarily a
though.
metric for 100% divorces, right? Because there's plenty of people who are married now who aren't happy who are still married, and there's people who go through that and are still married, or have kids, and then their kids end up being successful.
Right. Yeah, but I don't know about you, man, but I really don't want a guy that doesn't want to be. I'd honestly rather he leave.
Oh, for sure.
And don't you feel the same?
I'm not saying it's the ideal. I'm not saying it's the ideal.
Okay, but like, I want to know from you. So if you were married and you knew that your wife didn't really want to be with you, do you seriously want to drag her through working things out, or would you rather her just get the fuck out of your life?
How would I know for sure that she didn't want me?
She told you, like, man, I fucking hate you. I think you're annoying. You fucking... And it's a period where she's constantly nagging you. She doesn't like you. Let her go.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But in the case that it did, I'd leave with two options. It depends on whether I was still in love with her and wanted to be in the relationship. If I was, I would propose. I'd be like, hey, I love you. We've been in this relationship for however long, right? Because we are married. Obviously, there was a commitment and love at some point. And I propose a healthy way of building bonds and connection within the relationship, like counseling, things like that. And
right, but you can't force it.
I would want to get to the bottom of why she's unhappy with me.
Right.
Now, if even, and actually because of my own beliefs, even if I wasn't happy within the relationship, because I probably wouldn't be if she wasn't happy, to be honest, I still would probably go down that route than the divorce route.
Okay, so say you try it.
If I was unhappy and I was feeling like I don't want to be with this person, but I knew in my head that I literally did love this person enough to marry them and to make such a huge step and to civilly bond myself to said person, I would at least probably be like, okay,
sure,
maybe I could actually still try to salvage this, right? There's ways to go about this. I know this person intimately. I know who they are, assuming, right?
Right.
So if it just had to do with unhappiness, I would think divorce probably isn't the best option.
Okay.
Or it isn't the only option. Now, my opinion differs when there's things like infidelity, abuse, things like that. Get out of that marriage.
Right. Okay, so question. So let's say you try. Sure, there's nothing wrong with trying. So you do a month of counseling. She's like, man, I don't want to fucking go to counseling. I don't like you. And it's not working. What do you do?
Well, it's like butting my head into a wall. There's such thing as consent, right? And so obviously, it only works if two people are participating.
Right. So at that point, it's best.
That's just not how marriage works. That's like how relationships work, period. Right?
Okay, but let's say it's not working, though.
Whether I was married, if she didn't want me and she wasn't willing to explore or try,
right, or either way, yeah,
or amending, then we just get divorced.
There you go.
And I don't necessarily at that point. I think maybe you're under the impression that every divorce has to be messy. Because I actually don't think that's the case. I think a lot of people who are civilly married actually don't have messy divorces and actually end up co-parenting, things like that. My mother's divorced. She's co-parented. There was no toxicity happening there. And so it's like, I get that you want to talk about the pitfalls.
Okay, well, you might not be toxic, but you don't know the girl. Like, what if the girl's toxic? I'm going to be honest. You will never know until it happens.
You can't, but that's the pitfall of civil marriage, right? That's not an issue with religious marriage.
Right. So, but that's why I'm against civil marriage. So I think we're on the same page. Like, it's honestly a waste of life to be with somebody that you don't want to be with anymore. It really is a waste, right? Our life's so short. There's no point. And also, it's an insult to your partner, to be honest, right? Just like how you would probably feel insulted if you knew somebody didn't want to be with you, but they're with you anyways because they can't leave or it's too hard, right? Don't you think that's a bit insulting? Wouldn't you rather that they go off and be with the love of their life and maybe you could get remarried or maybe not, or you have more time to yourself, right? Useful time you could use on anything else.
Okay, yeah, to answer your question, I would prefer to be separated than to be in a relationship where my partner didn't want me. I think that's the majority of people. I mean, who have a
lot of people would actually.
I'm not finished. I guess that would be the majority of people who have healthy self-esteem and healthy relationship with themselves. That kind of thing. They're more likely to not stick in a place like that. That being said, I don't actually think that's the case. I think a lot of people are married and not happy and staying married because they don't want to have to deal with the divorce and the splitting the funds and all those different things.
A lot of people are perfectly happy being with somebody that they know doesn't want to be with them, and they just don't care. So men specifically, there's some women that are like that too, but a lot of men don't care. Yeah. And so what I'm saying, and so where I say that, the guy who's desperate on marriage is not a good guy, what I say too is, the odds are, like, the guy that just wants to be married doesn't care how you feel as long as he's married to you. This is a guy that never loved you, right? This is why I advocate for the guy that's, a little bit more hesitant on marriage, or at the least isn't pushing it. It's not his idea. And I feel
I agree with pushing it, but not the desire in itself, for the very reasons which I stated before you, of the populace that don't just view marriage in a secular sense. There's hundreds, I guess billions, if we're counting every religion in the world, that marry, and they don't look at marriage through a secular lens. So I don't necessarily I still don't agree with your statement about a guy who wants to be married is the issue. I don't think it's necessarily a guy wanting to be married that is the issue, but rather how marriage is done. So it's not on the man. Does that make sense? And so I feel like when you frame it in a man desiring to be married, for whatever cultural, religious reason, whatever, it almost kind of villainizes them in a sense, rather than villainizing how the institution of marriage is carried out through society.
Sure.
Are you following?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, it is still that guy's actions, right? You're not doing that, right? You live in the same society. I'm not doing that. I live in the same society. So something I don't believe, it's like we got to quit making so many excuses for men. Seriously. Throughout history, we've done nothing but make excuses for men, and it does not help. What actually helps things to get better is taking away these excuses. You got to be accountable. And the reality is, these men know what they're doing.
Well, I think in the same vein, if you frame it in that kind of way, when it comes to accountability, especially with marriage, is that marriage cannot happen without two consenting parties, right?
Right.
And so no one is forced into marriage in the Western world, in America, for instance, or, Western societies, UK, whatever. I live there as well. You're not necessarily, traditionally a man gets down on one knee and asks, will you marry me? Right? A woman has the opportunity, and she's not legally bonded. She's not forced to say yes or to make marriage arrangements or anything like that. Personally, most of the people I know that are married, because I do hang around lots and lots of religious people, I mean, the women are more likely to plan the weddings than the men. The men just want to sit back and kind of chill. They're not really worried about, the ceremony or, making all those plans. Guys are pretty aloof. It's usually the woman who is a lot more intentional and wanting to be married and who has fantasized in their head of walking down the aisle and things like that. They have a lot of aspirations of being married. It's not just men that have aspirations of being married.
Wow.
Pardon? Hello?
That's honestly sad. That there are women that are dreaming of being married. That's actually really sad, and I think that these women need to, really learn their value. They're more than just you get what I'm saying? Like, I do find that very sad when women make marriage their whole identity and their life. They're more than that. Don't you agree?
I guess you could agree that with both ends, though. Let's say, for instance, a man, he wants to be a husband, but more than just be a husband, he wants to be like a good husband, right? And so from the time he was a kid, he wanted to find a woman to marry, to do good things for, not the negative things. Like take care of her and children and be a provider. I wouldn't necessarily say that's a negative thing that he wants to do that. The same way I wouldn't necessarily say it's a negative thing for a woman to be married if she wants to be married to that kind of man. I believe women should have the choice to have the kind of relationships that they want.
Sure, I just wish women knew that they were more than just a marriage, or that their life goal shouldn't be a marriage. Like, I believe a marriage and or a relationship, whatever, should be part of your life, not your whole life, right? You should have other things, right? You have your hobbies, you have your friends, you have your career. It's like your life shouldn't be reduced to Joe's wife. That's sad.
Well, I mean, from your perspective, it's sad, but I mean, there are women out there that view being a wife as maybe the highest calling of their life.
Oh my
and raising children is the highest calling of their life that brings them the most happiness and joy. I don't necessarily think that's a negative thing, though. I think if that's her choice and that's what makes her happy and that she wants to do, I'd actually encourage her to do it if it's actually her desire, right?
Oh yeah, kids.
According to her choice as a woman. I just don't necessarily think that doesn't mean I disregard any risk having to do with marriage. I understand those risks and that not all marriages work out, right? And
for sure, yeah.
To me, I already told you I don't necessarily agree with civil marriage. I would only encourage somebody to get married religiously, or maybe not done on paper or legally. And that kind of marriage, I think, is foolproof because the criticism that you have for civil marriage is that you can't leave at any time you want. That's completely mitigated.
Exactly.
If they're not married civilly. So I think your criticisms to me, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but you can always clarify with me, is you seem to have the largest issue you have with marriage is the legally binding part of being married.
Absolutely.
Right? It takes away from the agency of a woman or a man to leave the relationship when they want.
Absolutely.
Or when they decide it is best for them.
Yep, and it opens nothing but danger and headache. You're absolutely right. Why not avoid that?
And civilly married, right? Like
absolutely.
The whole process of having to get divorced, finding a divorce lawyer, all those things. Mm-hmm. We agree.
It's a waste of life, dude. A complete waste of life. Seriously. You've worked at that nursing home, so you understand, we don't have a lot of time. Why waste life and time on stupid stuff when you don't need to?
Well, one last thing, because I actually have to go soon. I don't want to take up any more of your time, really. Just one more question for you. In the case that somebody, you know, let's say the relationship is perfectly healthy, right? And you know, maybe they have a kid, maybe they don't, whatever. But the relationship is a healthy, good relationship. It's a good man, it's a good woman, and they decide that they want to be civilly married, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say that relationship, they do get civilly married, they have kids, and they stay married for the rest of their life until they die. But they were civilly married. Was there anything wrong with that relationship?
So here's what I'd say. So I would suggest, so if you want to get civilly married, why not do that at the end? There's no race. They're always giving out marriage licenses, right? So why does it need to be at the beginning? Why not do it once you know it's a good fit and you're happy? So why, you know, tons of people do this. There's a lot of very smart people that they live together, have kids, they're together 10 plus years, and then they get married. That's the smart thing to do. Huh?
Or they don't.
Right. But sometimes they like having a wedding, right? You know, before they die, they want to, you know, for whatever reasons, want to be able to.
Usually that's what people think of when they think of marriage, right? Is the wedding ceremony, the spectacle of it all.
Right.
I think actually what the majority of people think about, because, I mean, the relationship between being married and not married doesn't really change, or at least it shouldn't. I mean, if you're in a relationship prior to being married and then you get married, there's nothing that changed.
Exactly.
I mean, if we're being real, there really nothing changed at all, besides the fact that now you're called married and you had a wedding.
Right. So I would just do it at the very, very end, like 10 plus years later, because that's what makes sense. Don't you agree that if you are going to get legally married, it should be after you've been with each other and you know it's a good fit? So that's when you know, obviously when you go to a car dealership, you're going to want to see the car and test it out, not just buy it and then test it, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I agree with you on that. And what I'll add to that actually is I think a large part of failed marriages are happening too soon anyway. But I think that adds a huge part of the problem is that people get married too soon, or don't properly vet their partner. I think that's a vetting problem though. Like you find a person, you discover who they are truly, you vet them properly, you make sure they're not an abuser over time, right? I mean, you mentioned your friend actually remembered it. She got pregnant and then the man started abusing her or whatever. Mm-hmm. Were they married, by the way?
Nope.
They weren't married, so she was able to leave.
Nope, they're still together. Yeah, man, it's sad.
Oh, shit.
And the crazy thing is, she's the one with the fucking... She's the one with the house. So I'm like, every time I talk to her, I'm like hitting my head against the wall. I'm like, it's hard to feel bad for her, honestly.
Yeah, I know plenty of people like that in my life personally as well, who are in relationships that shouldn't be. I think everybody does, right? Yep. And so I guess you clarified your point. Those were, I guess, the two things that my gripes that I don't necessarily didn't agree with you on. I still haven't quite wrapped my head around some of the statements, but I feel like you've explained your thought processes behind them that have made more sense to me. And so, you know, I'd say that's the biggest thing. You also seem to have clarified that you're more against civil marriage and legal binding of marriage rather than just marriage for everybody religiously or whatever.
Right.
So, okay. I mean, that sounds perfectly fair. I mean, obviously I have a different worldview than yourself. Like, I'm one of the people who wants to be married, as we discussed earlier, but it's for religious reasons, not for civil reasons, right?
Right.
To honor my partner and provide for my children, protect them from men that aren't good, right? And so, and from a world that isn't good. I think you also touched a little bit earlier on like patriarchy and stuff like that. Yeah, I totally agree with you on it being harmful for both men and women as well. So I'm not a huge proponent of gender roles, but I do see benefits of, you know, healthy, close monogamous relationships, regardless of whether it's within marriage or not. I'm not going to judge somebody for being married, I guess is my point. I believe people should be able to do it if they want to, right? And whether it works out or it doesn't work out, it's kind of on them, you know? And you can only tell people, but obviously, I think it's best people are just free to choose to do what they want to do when it comes to their relationships.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes people
Just-
have to learn, right?
So, all right, what is it? Is it Olivia? Is that your name?
Oh no, my name's Claire. My main
Claire.
YouTube channel is Olive Oil Run, so that's why. The other channel is 500K on it. I'm just trying to grow this one.
Okay. Yep. I mean, do you have any questions for me, or I don't know?
I mean, honestly, I'm like shocked that you agree with me because every time I bring this up, all the guys are like, "What the fuck?" So it's it's nice to see that there are like reasonable, like smart men out there. Because seriously, you're probably the first guy that has seen things the way I do and agrees.
Yeah, on very specific things, but yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think we're very different, and the way we present or talk about it may be different, but I believe the spirit is the same. Like, especially when it comes to civil marriage and stuff. And so, whether you encourage something or whether I encourage something may be different, but I think the view overall and the pitfalls and negatives may be very similar or the same when it comes to marriage, especially in particular, right? I mean, you obviously are against civil marriage. I'm not a huge proponent of civil marriage. I don't think it's great. I think it's a failing institution according to statistics.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the prosperity of the partners, not necessarily the children. I think the children actually is the opposite of that. But I want the prosperity of partners to reach something that is more amicable than an 80%, if that makes sense, an 80% failure rate. I think if you were part of any business, if it was an 80% failure rate, you'd be like, this isn't working out.
Absolutely.
But still people are encouraged to be married even though it's failing, right? Overall, it's failing. At least when it comes to happiness between partners within the confines of the marriage. That doesn't mean, but then again, marriages who aren't happy divorce, and then they can live their own prosperous lives outside of that. Plenty of women get married, divorce, and then find new relationships and live very happy lives even though they're divorced. It's not like divorce always ruins a woman's life or a man's life. But I just think overall I think it's important to look deeper into just the fact that it's failing though and think, why are these kinds of things failing?
And what it could be too.
I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible? Because like, you know how men are, right? Like men,
What?
kind of like, once they feel like they got something, men kind of tend to get lazy. So do you think it's possible that maybe part of the reason marriage fails is once a man gets married, he feels like, oh, all right, now time to play Call of Duty,
I've done it.
right?
I've done it. I actually, in my mind, there's no numbers on this. I don't think we can necessarily say. My personal thoughts on it, however, since you asked me, is I think men generally have a little less emotional intelligence than a woman. I think they have less emotional intelligence. They're less observant emotionally, less in touch with their emotions than women. Is that something you agree on?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Okay. So I do view it that way. I don't necessarily think that a lot of the men who are failing in their marriage are actually ill-intended, however. I think they simply lack the proper tools to make the relationship and their marriage successful. And I think that's the problem. I think if you were to give young men or men in general and teach them the proper tools and things to do in order to make their marriage successful, it would be so. But I don't think that's happening, so it's not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I feel like part of it might just be like, the man may not even be aware of this, but like once he's married, he just kind of doesn't feel like he needs to put as much effort, and he might not even be consciously aware of this, but he feels like he could coast, right?
Right. I believe complacency. So I think men, when they get married, or especially maybe if they're traditionally married, or they view marriage as something that oh, it's something I need to do in life, right?
Yeah.
I guess the kind of marriage crazy guys you would say that would encourage or push marriage because it's something on their checklist that in their life they're going to get married. I do believe if you have that sort of mindset about marriage and then you do get married, the goal is already hit.
Yep.
So you do become complacent because now you're married to the woman, right? And yeah, now it is going to be harder for the relationship to end because now you guys made vows to each other, you know, to the court and to God or whatever, according to religion or whatever. And I think a lot of men, because I think partially they become complacent because of the not being as in touch with their emotions or being as emotionally intelligent as maybe their female partner. That being said, there are plenty of men. I've met men who have high emotional intelligence, have successful marriages, and treat their women very well. And I've met women who and abuse their spouses verbally, heavily. I've met that. Not so much physically, but I've met many women who do verbally abuse their partners. But I guess what I'm really saying is I agree with the complacency part, but that still doesn't get to the why, right? You're saying, okay, men get in a relationship and then they coast, but like, why are they coasting? And I think the answer to that is it's a checklist thing. They're not taught properly, like truly properly, not trained to be good husbands or be good partners in relationships. I mean, if we look at society as a whole, are people really being taught how to be good partners in a relationship to begin with? Unless you look it up yourself. I mean, I would view myself as somebody who would be equipped to treat a person well or my partner well, but that's because it's something I'm intentional about. Meanwhile, I don't think most men or women, for that matter, are as intentional about trying to make sure that the relationship is always good. I just think that women are more likely to do it than men are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. I completely agree. Like, I feel like most men that get married, they kind of, are not really taking it seriously, if that makes sense. They just view it as something to do, or like buying a Rolex. They kind of have a nonchalant attitude, and they don't realize that, hey, this is something that's very serious. And and you could tell that men are not really thinking that much when they get married, because you see how many men online complain about divorce, like, oh, I can't believe I lost half. It's like, yeah, I mean, why did you make your wife quit her job? You should have known. Like you get what I'm saying? It's like a shock.
I get what you're saying in that area. Actually,
a lot of ignorance.
I mean, that makes sense. I would distinct that I don't think necessarily that the men aren't serious about the relationship. I think men sometimes express seriousness in relationships differently.
Like, they're clearly not thinking.
I think it's serious in the sense of, I think men tend to, when they get into marriage relationships, prioritize the commitment part and staying within a relationship or with the partner. I think there's a statistic, I can't think of it myself, but men are more likely to stay in an unhappy marriage than women. I think that could probably be backed up by the fact that women are obviously more likely to initiate divorces.
But that's not good. That I have a huge issue with.
I just think that adds to the fact that men, when they get into marriage relationships, a lot of the time that they express, I guess, a part of what they're trying to express within relationships, or how they take it seriously, is staying, which I don't necessarily think is the best way. Obviously, I actually don't think that's the best way. But I think when I see that, I think that's how men are actually doing it. I think that's how men are actually doing it on average in marriages that fail. Is a man will know his relationship is failing. He'll know the marriage is failing. He'll know he's not meeting the needs of his partner or whatever, or vice versa. But he'll stay as a sign of his commitment to the relationship or to the marriage or whatever. And I think that's actually the wrong route to go. I think there's obviously better routes to go, such as actually learning the tools to mend the relationship or leaving. So, but like I said, it's not, that comes back to the point where I'm like, you point out the problem, And I agree with a lot of you pointing out the problem of what's taking place within these marriages, or how hard it is, or that marriage isn't working. But it's like, then again, society isn't really teaching how to make these things work. Does that make sense? And so it's a recipe for disaster to begin with. Do you think these are things that should be taught more? Like, what is it? You point them out, but I'm like,
Yeah.
in your head, what is your solution for the men? What is your solution for the women? What is your solution for marriage? Like, what is your thought process? What are you thinking? Like,
so you could definitely teach men. You could provide that education, but I feel like, you know, the more effective solution is not getting legally married, because there's no need to do it, like, at all, you know, because if you simply just, like, you know, if you're happy, just be together. You know, if you like being around each other, move in with each other, right? If you guys are such soulmates, work out the finances together, right? If you just do it like that, then you know what? The multitude of risk and issues, boom, disappeared, right? When you just leave when you want to leave, and let your husband, boyfriend leave when he wants to leave, right? All of that's solved like that. And I think that is really, like, the best solution, honestly. And
just not getting civilly married.
Right. And because the thing is, there's no rush to do it. And if somebody wants to get married, you could get married later on, right? Their marriages aren't going away. So I just think it's insane. It seems, you know, kind of, if you really think about it, the way that traditional marriage is done is very backwards. Because what logically makes sense is to get married in the end, after several years, if at all, right? So
right, if at all. Here's another thing. One of the previous callers mentioned it, but about, like, taxes and pooling wealth, for instance. Let's say, I feel like a lot of people actually get married for the reason of finance, right? And you actually mentioned this with women, for instance. They get married, or they pick marriage a lot for financial reasons, right?
Yeah.
Because what normally happens, or ideally happens in a marriage, is that you pool your funds together, whatever, joint bank accounts, whatever, and you're legally binded financially, right? And I think the idea is, okay, the two partners combining their wealth creates a pool of wealth for the prosperity of their children or their family overall, right?
Right, but you could replace that with a conversation. Yeah, but the thing is, if you guys really get along that well, you both should be able to sit down, open up a college fund, and have a conversation about how much each of you guys are putting in, talk about the mortgage, or pick out what place you guys want to live in, and have a talk about whose name's on the title, how much are we putting in. You get what I'm saying? That's literally a conversation.
Listen, I actually agree that I agree with that point as well. I'm just trying to open your eyes to the fact that a lot of people feel like marriage is the only option for those kinds of things.
It's not.
Or for things that it's actually legally required for. For instance, let's think about the military, for instance. One of my brothers is in the military, but a lot of the things for the woman or the family to receive the benefits necessary, or all the benefits of the military, both of the people need to be legally married, right? Like,
if you're in the military, you should get married.
Isn't going to take your relationship seriously unless you're civilly married.
When it comes to the military, I agree on obviously, I have, like, sense in my head. It's like, yeah, you got to get married if your husband's in the military, because if something happens to him, right? Like, do you get what I'm getting at? Because, like, that's a high-risk job. So with something like that, it just makes sense to do, right? But, you know, it's...
Outside of that circumstance, you wouldn't encourage
if there's no need.
No civil marriage outside of military, but you're telling me now that if the circumstance is military, that'd be the only way you accept a civil marriage, or a civil marriage would make sense to you?
Right, for the woman to do 100%, because, you know, her partner could die that she didn't break up with, and, you know, what if she was relying on his income, or needs I heard that there's, like, a payout or something, right? Or what if she's with him for years and years, and...
But then she would still fit or be at risk of all the pitfalls of civil marriage, though, that we discussed earlier,
You're right, but...
not being able to divorce as soon, but you'd still be okay with it then.
Right. Yeah, it's just the way that it's like
necessary.
structured financially. It's a very strange financial structure. Like, would you agree? But like the most, but a normal job or anything outside the military, it's not necessary, right? You could have a sit down conversation about, but with the military, it's like, yeah, no, you do need the marriage license. That is required to obtain, just because of how the financial structure is. They kind of make it to where, it's like you kind of have to get married, right? If you want any support.
Yes, if you want the benefits of the military, yeah, that is the case all the time.
So, yeah, no, for sure. Definitely, if you're in the military, marry the dude. But outside of that, I mean, you really never need to get married, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I like I said, I already agree with the whole civil marriage thing. So I guess you answered my one last question. I appreciate that.
And I am curious. I mean, have you been married?
Have I been married?
Yeah.
No, I have personally never been married. No. I've been in relationships. I personally have never been married. I'm not necessarily like you 100%. I'm religious, and so I actually view getting married religiously as a high goal in my life, but it has nothing to do with the state. It has everything to do with how I plan to take care of my family, my wife, and my responsibilities to them. I believe I should be a servant to my family and my wife, my children. I'm a servant the same way, I guess, the Savior was a servant. I'm Christian, I guess, if that reveals it. But that's my mindset on marriage, and so I'm not against marriage at all, really. I have very conflicting feelings regarding civil marriage, because in my mind, when I look at the world, I see that it's not working.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So, but they don't see. To me, they're not conflicting, because civil marriage to me isn't really what marriage is about. That's actually governmental papers. I believe the real marriages take place in, are spiritual, religious kind of marriages. And I guess if I were to speak to a religious person who had the same beliefs as me, I would encourage them to get married. I wouldn't necessarily, I want them to understand the risk and stuff like that of being married. But when it comes to civil marriage, I don't necessarily know if I'd, recommend them being civil married. But if they were to be, if someone told me they wanted to be civilly married, I wouldn't necessarily say, no, you can't do that. Never do that. You know what I mean? That's not just me. I guess my mindset on that is like, do what you feel is going to make you happy and prosper. And if you truly believe you're going to be a good partner to the person that you're going to be in a civil marriage to, by all means do that. Like,
yeah. Well, I'm curious. Like,
really might differ.
Have you like been in a relationship with a woman that like really wanted to get civilly married? Because like I'm just a bit curious, because like I feel like we kind of agree on everything. Like, to me, it feels like you had a girlfriend that was like, like, what? Like, what do you mean you don't want to get civilly? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of the vibe I get. I'm just curious.
Right. Well, personally, if I'm being serious, I mean, I'm personally conflicted. All the relationships I've been in, I would say one wanted to be civilly married. One specifically did actually want to be civilly married to me. Or not even civilly married, but just married. But in, the way of how everything works out, that means married in the temple, and that means also married civilly, right? Civilly bounded to each other, according to the law and the government, right? And so, in that aspect, it's something I'd still be willing to do. Maybe that's kind of dumb, stupid of me, but I personally would still do it. But I'd say with the woman, when she did want to be civilly married to me, it was a thought in the back of my head, and obviously we didn't end up marrying. But I think the goal, as you said, as you keep on saying, is like you keep on saying, oh, it should be done at the end. when you know everything and you actually have worked through everything and you know how the person responds and your relationship has actually worked out.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, like, so the girls that want civil marriage, like, what are their arguments? Like, have you ever just told the girl, like, hey, listen, we could work out the finances personally. I'll do a better job than the government, or I'll give you a better deal than the court will give you. Like, what do they say? Hello? Oh shit, it's breaking. Testing. Yeah, Jay, it kind of cut out. Hold on, let me try to exit. Hello? Man, that is so strange. Yeah, it's not working. I'll try to refresh. Hello? Yeah, it's not working. But yeah, I'm glad that I finally met a guy that agrees with me. Because, yeah, there is no point in getting married. You guys, literally nothing but risk. And if you love your partner, you won't trap them. Try one more time. Anyways, you guys, let me know if you guys have any questions. If you guys want to debate me, add me on Discord. If you guys disagree with any of my opinions or have a red pill view, you guys could...
Do you feel like you were kind of the adult?
Call in. But I hope I change you guys' opinions. Because, yeah, and just so you guys know what civil marriage means is a legal marriage. So there's no point in doing that, like, you know, and also, you know, you could just tell the girl or just take care of the girl. Make sure that she has what she needs, you know, and also you could give her more because you won't have to spend all that money in paying for lawyers in court. You could probably give her a better deal than what the government will give her, right? And if you don't want to give money away, then you could just marry or date a girl who works like you. Maybe date a girl, you know, if you're a doctor, date a girl that's a doctor also, right? There's just no reason to get married. It's just, literally, let me tell you guys something. 85,000 women and girls are unalived worldwide, okay? About 51K, 51.1, 60% are unalived by an intimate partner. There's no need for this. Really. There's no need for any of this. You could just work things out, talk about things at the beginning, figure out what you're going to do, how much money you want to give her, you know, oh, if we're together for this long, I give you this, you know, or maybe you could do if you have a girl that's not working, maybe you could do something like, I'll give you this much money every year, you put it in savings. There's so many things you could do, right, to where you don't need to get married and go through divorce, right? You could maybe give her a little bit every year or talk out a number or decide what you're going to give to her. You could just have a fucking conversation. So why go through court? Why go through all that? There's no need to do that. So marriage, like I said, it's nothing but you're bringing negative stuff into your relationship. And if it's true you really love her, then why would you want to trap her? So, and ladies, don't get married. You know, if he's really loyal to you forever and gonna treat you well forever, okay, why do you need a ring to do that? Why do you need me to sign above the dotted line to do that? Why do you need me to marry you to take care of me? The fuck? Pick a different guy. The right guy will take care of you no matter what, paper or no paper. So that's really where I'm at with that. The way you keep a woman with you forever is being nice to her, being good to her. This is the only way. You can't marriage your way through. It doesn't work. If you are mean to your girlfriend, she will leave you, or wife. So there's no point. There's no point. And when it comes to custody, if you're a good dad, you'll have no problems. You earn custody through just being a good dad, period. If you're a good dad and the kids like you, of course your fucking girlfriend or whatever you want to call her will let you see the kids, of course. You know, so I think it's very simple, and it should really... And Carlos, just do the link tree. Again, stop doing things I didn't ask for, Carlos. Just do the fucking link tree. I never asked you to promote the fucking piano channel. So, all of my social medias, you guys are located over in the link tree. Carlos, just do the fucking link tree. And in a moment, I'm going to reset this. So... everybody rejoin.